competing with each other. We're not fighting each other to promote our own theories. We're actually taking the time to learn from each other and edify one another and to work towards a goal. So when you hear me say something smart like that, or anything I've said tonight, you can count 90% of it is not original research on my part. Some of it, of course, is, but I'm really working together with a huge team that God has put together. We're loosely organized. We talk on email. We see each other at conferences. But, anything that I say is that, my wife and I have talked it over. We're talking to Gary Bates from Australia, who's now in Atlanta, and, we're all kind of honing. Joe Jordan, we're honing and refining each other's understanding of this in a non-competitive way to where we actually want, we want to get at the truth, and we don't care whose idea it was at first,
Yeah.
We just want to promote the truth.
I definitely understand that. You mentioned it earlier. I actually have two questions. Earlier you mentioned you moved to Roswell as a part of your calling, but why did you pick Roswell in particular as a place to carry out your calling?
Well, I would have to say I think God picked it out. But in the natural, Roswell, the word Mecca comes to mind, is that people, I live here now. I'm in the hospitality industry. I deal with tourists as much as I do people that live here, whether it's business or whether it's sheer tourism. But Roswell, number one, is a word that's known all over the world. You don't even have to say Roswell, New Mexico. People know what you're talking about, and they affiliate it with aliens. There's the one thing as far as the people that are coming here, it's kind of like a Mecca or a once-in-a-lifetime spiritual journey. Even if they're not coming to Roswell for any particular reason, if they're coming within 500 miles of Roswell, they will detour just to come here. Because I think people, there's two camps really. There's people that just have a strong intellectual curiosity, and the Internet feeds their growing knowledge base about UFOs and what they believe about aliens, and they just sort of feel, they sense that I've got to come to Roswell at least once in my life. They think they're going to get some truth here. So enter, God calling people, or me or others, to Roswell to meet the people who are coming here for truth. If you're coming somewhere for truth, the Word of God simply has to be in the mix. And there was nobody in Roswell doing anything like what I do, it turned out. So I think that's a large part of why God sent me here. What I've also found, though, is that whenever I'm not in Roswell, like for instance, I should mention, just to promote, that I'll be in Nashville in April, along with a lot of other speakers from the Christian Symposium at the Last Days Conference being held in Nashville, April 23rd, 24th. It's last-days.net. It's linked from my website. But when you're talking on the topic of aliens and UFOs, whenever I'm anywhere but Roswell, just having Roswell, New Mexico, at the end of my name is at least as good as having PhD at the end of your name in almost any other field,
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Oh, Guy Malone from Roswell, New Mexico is going to be sharing 10 years of his research into the UFO alien phenomena. People are just going to assume that guy must know what he's talking about. He's from Roswell, for Pete's sake. He's got the inside scoop. He's got the inside track. So I think it adds, in one sense, I think God sent me here to meet the people who are coming here. But in the other sense, I think God is working it to where because I'm speaking what he wants me to, I can springboard from Roswell's infamy to speak with more perceived authority. Never really had to think it through or explain it that way. Good question.
That's an interesting concept that you say because, like I said before, I've been following UFOs and aliens for a long time before I learned that they were fallen angels. And one of the things that always caught my attention was anything that had to do with Roswell. It could be a news broadcast on somebody selling widgets, but I would pay attention because of that connection. One thing that you did glance over earlier, you mentioned it briefly. I know some people will want to know more about this. You mentioned night terrors. Can you expound on what night terrors are and exactly how you experience it and what it entails?
Well, I think there's a lot of words that describe a similar phenomena. Night terrors and, say, sleep paralysis or old hag, they seem to be worldwide a cultural phenomena of people experiencing some presence or some entity either pressing on their chest, maybe trying to kill them, maybe trying to have sex with them, but it's all kind of vague as well. Like, it may be a dream. You know, they think, did I just have a crazy dream? Or they may not even remember it exactly the next morning, not for a couple of days or not for later on, or they flat out suppress the memory of it. So just night terrors in general, I think that due to paranormal influences, you know, fallen angels in general, this whole night terror, sleep paralysis thing is all over society and world history, and alien abduction is kind of just a subcategory of it. You know, to one culture, night terrors or sleep paralysis are explained by this legend or this folklore. You know, the jinns and the genies, they're coming to take children away at night and, you know, turn them into changelings or to swap places with them. You know, it's where the genie lives a day in the real world as the child, and the child lives a day in the genie's world, you know, with all the other genies. So I think it's a common phenomena, but that the legends and the explanations for it are actually kind of more varied, I think, than people in America are aware of. But as a subset, the alien abduction phenomena is one explanation of night terrors.
All right, and I'm glad you said that, one explanation of night terrors. How do you feel about the scientific field of study that basically says that night terrors are just a byproduct of sleep? Do you think they're misunderstanding, or do you think it's purposeful disinformation of what's really going on?
You know, there might be some purposeful disinformation. I haven't really thought about that from that angle, but I think that it's a real phenomena that is going on. You know, it could be a byproduct of sleep, but beyond that, I mean, really, legitimately, it could be a byproduct of sleep. If I were to just leave it at that, I would sound smart. You know, it could be that that's all there is to it. But I think what actually happens is that even if it is a naturally occurring byproduct of sleep, what's happening is that fallen angels know that about us. They know our weaknesses. They know how we're vulnerable. They know how our bodies work. They've been observing us for millennia. They know this about us. So I think they sort of attach themselves to the night terror phenomena. If it's only happening naturally or in the natural, a fallen angel, or a good angel for that matter, can no doubt tell or sense that when that's going on, just by looking at our energy signatures, our brain waves, or whatever angels can see that you and I can't see, and then they choose that moment to attack when we're already immobilized and paralyzed because we're asleep. And then the alien or angel shows up, and we attribute the paralysis to the angel or to the alien. No, the paralysis was actually happening naturally as a night terror, as a sleep paralysis. But then the alien shows up, and we think aliens have the power to paralyze us. I think they're really just attaching themselves in many instances. They may be the cause of it in some cases, but in many instances they're probably just attaching themselves to a natural phenomena to get credit for it and deceive us into thinking they have more power than they actually do.
That's interesting. I've never heard that perspective on it, and that's a very interesting perspective because it's, like you said, it's a common thing with alien abduction. They seem to attach themselves to that, and I was one person that just always assumed that's how they operated. But like I said, this is the first time I've heard it put in that perspective, that maybe they are just attaching themselves to the phenomenon.
Yeah, well, let's extend that for a second and take it back to a topic we were talking about earlier, hybridization. False pregnancies are normal for women. I think, I'm no expert, but I think like 1 out of 3 or 2 out of 3 pregnancies